Once again, it's time for another Hitler history. Once again, it's also me, Adam. This time around, we're covering the close of World War I, the subsequent revolution in Germany, and their impression on Hitler, and how the defeat and upheaval in Germany led to Hitler's anti-Semitism. The German Revolution is a bit, well, complicated. So let's get down into where we last left off with Hitler. That being Hitler's total shock at the collapse of his beloved German Empire and humiliation by the Versailles Treaty while recuperating at Pasewalk. Hitler obviously wasn't the only one shocked by the German defeat, with the German request for an armistice back on October 3rd taking the home front by surprise. Those of the home front were unaware of the real situation and imminent defeat on the front as it collapsed from its failed final push back in March to its crumbling as the Allies commenced to whip the Imperial German Army in August. This collapse only being a matter of time as Germany's situation worsened. From October 3rd, peace gained rapid traction among civilians and political groups, notably communists, as the German government also faced collapse. Civilians being faced with the hardship and near ruin the war brought as it sucked up resources and made daily life a struggle for a conflict that had been dragging on for 4 whole years. It made sense for people to be fed up with the war. Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff, effective military dictators of Germany, would shift their power back over to the civilian sector so as to absolve themselves of blame for signing the armistice. With peace now being a popular demand on everyone's mind, the Imperium of Germany would slide into oblivion as the civil unrest worsened. As part of correspondence with President Woodrow Wilson and his 14 points, one of his conditions for negotiations of surrender being the abdication of the Kaiser, signaling the end of monarchy not just for Prussia, but all other German kingdoms as well. Wilhelm II had little time left. As Hitler lay in Pasewalk before the armistice, Germany erupted into open revolution. First with the mutiny of sailors in Wilhelmshaven on October 29th, and then Kiel from November 3rd, with sailors refusing to follow superiors' orders, these orders not being authorized by the Central Army Command, of a last-ditch battle against the Royal Navy. The formula of revolution with rising against the old order and forming socialist councils made up of civilians and soldiers would spread and encompass all of Germany. The first monarch to be ousted by a council would be Ludwig III of Bavaria on November 7th, with the revolution managing to spread to Munich all the way in the south of Germany, showing how quickly the monarchy would dissolve. Kaiser Wilhelm II would follow on November 9th, by a council and armed naval division, the People's Navy Division, in Berlin, along with the last imperial chancellor, Prince Maximilian of Baden, who had only been appointed on October 3rd and had helped to sue peace for Germany.
Government.
Spoil. This is right.
Government. Communists.
This in here. Hey, what the hell's wrong with this?
Offensive.
It's slow. What the is this?
Napoleonic.
Where the
Army.
go? What
Navy.
go? This is a nightmare. Wake me up.
Bismarck. Bismarck.
Help me! Help me!
Bismarck. Bismarck.
I can't help you now.
Taking Max's place as Chancellor would be Friedrich Ebert of the Social Democratic Party of Germany, SPD, in Berlin, who saw that to maintain order among the revolutionaries would be the Kaiser to abdicate and for Max to give him the Chancellor's seat. The same day as the abdication of the Kaiser, leading SPD member and later Chancellor Philipp Scheidemann would proclaim Germany a republic in Berlin. It wouldn't be the only one, though, that day. Karl Liebknecht, a communist, would make his own proclamation of a socialist republic, also in Berlin, a good example of the schism between Germans and of what course their country should take after the monarchy. This schism being headed by Friedrich Ebert and General Wilhelm Graener, effective head of the army, of the Republic side, the two forming a pact promising to keep the far left out of the government and the army maintain some independence, and Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, communists of the Socialist Republic side. November 10th would see a new transitional government formed under a council of People's Deputies from the SPD and Independent Socialists, USPD, favoring Ebert's rule and method of government to form new elections. November 11th would obviously see Germany sign the armistice by the transitional government. November 15th sees the Stins-Legion agreement between unions and industry to end strikes and undermine councils on the union side, and an 8-hour workday from the industry side, preventing nationalization of Germany's industries. While the government transitioned and tried to stabilize the situation, the councils of the revolution largely wanted a parliamentary democracy. But what it was to be, and in practice and how to get there, is where many split off, with the SPD being too cautious to reform the government and letting more radical elements to fester and grow, who wanted to expand on the powers of the councils and follow a more Russian model. Back in Hitler's home German state of Bavaria, saw more radical elements take hold during the revolution. Hitler himself would leave Pasewalk on November 18th and return to Munich by the 21st. Without a war to fight, Hitler didn't have any other plans outside the army facing his demobilization in the near future. Not for another year and a half, for that matter. He would be assigned to the 7th Company of the 1st Reserve Battalion of the 2nd Infantry Regiment. The Munich Hitler would come back to was now deeply embroiled in the revolution as mentioned before. After Ludwig III had been deposed on November 7th, Bavaria was declared as the People's Free State of Bavaria by Kurt Eisner, a member of the USPD and Jew. Him being Jewish is important later. On November 8th, and largely unstable, not being able to gain support in the conservative countryside. The USPD being a more leftist part of the SPD that split from the SPD as it opposed the war, unlike the SPD. In the meantime, before Munich and Germany as a whole really began to heat up, Hitler along with war comrade Ernst Schmidt and 13 others would be assigned to Traunstein to guard a mainly Russian POW camp, staying there for 2 months until around late January 1919. Back in Berlin, December 6th saw the Chancellery occupied by the army loyal to the Republic and the council operating from there almost overthrown. A darn confusing matter in of itself. As troops returned to Berlin that December, Ebert welcomed them at the Brandenburg Gate with the phrase, "No enemy has vanquished you, as you return unconquered from the field of battle. I salute you." This statement by Ebert would fuel into the legend that Germany wasn't actually defeated in battle, but stabbed in the back. But we'll get more into that later. December 16th saw council representatives from around Germany meet in Berlin to decide on a system for a new constitution. The meeting would take place despite an incident on the 15th, with the army trying to prevent the meeting and firing on a group associated with the communist Spartacists. Ebert and Grainer fearing they would try to take over Berlin. On December 19th, the council representatives voted to have elections under Ebert's Republic government and not establish a council government of the leftists. Christmas would see Ebert's Republic Army scuffle with the People's Navy Division at the formal Imperial Palace after Ebert tried to remove them over fears of them taking over Berlin for the radicals. The army would be beaten back by the People's Navy Division and see the revolution take a considerably more bloody turn as the USPD, previously working with Ebert's SPD, left the Transitional Council. January 1st of 1919 would see the Spartacus League formally converted to a political party, the Communist Party of Germany, the KPD, founded by Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg. In the early part of January, only a few days after the KPD's founding, on January 7th, the KPD under Liebknecht and Luxemburg would join a strike and revolution attempt in Berlin, and flare up a string of communist uprisings around Germany that would only end in extreme bloodshed. The dismissing of a police chief loyal to the USPD, involving the Christmas crisis mentioned before, led to a call for the strike by the chief himself, an Emil Eichhorn, which would quickly turn into a call for greater revolution in light of the Russian one of 1917 to overthrow the Ebert government. It would end in failure as the Freikorps, swashbuckling nationalist and anti-communist soldiers, disillusioned by the German defeat and still ready to fight, allied with the Ebert government and forcefully ended the would-be revolution, concluding with the arrest, beating, and summary execution of Liebknecht and Luxemburg by the Freikorps. The Freikorps would become an important tool for Ebert to use to quell the uprisings occurring around Germany, such as the one in Munich under Eugene Levine.
We are in grave danger from the communists. Our freedom, our very way of life is at risk.
Levine.
I am told that you are the very best that we have. Anywhere. you will need to be.
Freikorps.
Take care of it.
With the regular army regulated to only 100,000 men by the Versailles Treaty. The Freikorps was an off-brand, less regulated, but still disciplined militia that vehemently hated communists. But their loyalty to Ebert was thin, as seen in the Kampf putsch to come. The nationalist/rightists of these paramilitary units would find common ground with Hitler as he rose to prominence in the 20s with the Freikorps dissolved in 1920, and the SA needing its ranks filled with battle-hardened veterans. As Hitler returned from guard duty in late January of 1919, Kurt Eisner would still be in power with his shaky government in Munich. But not for too long. This month brought the very first elections to the new republic, the first of an absurd amount to come. With Eisner's government governing poorly, he was voted out by the election of January 19th, with the SPD and Center getting a majority in the whole of the country. On February 21st, as he traveled to give his resignation speech to the Bavarian parliament, he would be assassinated by the young nationalist nobleman Anton Arkovalli. Only an hour later, Erhard Auer, SPD leader in Eisner's cabinet, speaking in tribute to Eisner although he was a critic of his, was shot and wounded by Alois Lindner. The double assassination threw Munich into a frenzy as there was now a power vacuum. The killing of Eisner by nationalists sent leftists on a spree to arrest upperclassmen. These actions by the left and shooting of Auer made SPD ministers flee to Bamberg. In the meantime, until March 7th, Ernst Niekisch would govern in a council until a Johannes Hoffmann of the SPD pieced together a coalition to govern. Hoffmann's government wasn't to last very long. In the night between April 6th and 7th, a Soviet republic under the USPD was declared and to be headed by Ernst Toller of the USPD. Hoffmann and the SPD fled to Bamberg to try and gain control of Munich from the Soviet. Toller himself would last even shorter than Hoffmann. A mere 6 days later, Toller would be ousted on April 12th by the Communists, which now had power under Russians Eugene Levin, along with Tovir Axelrod and Max Levin, all happening to be Jewish. Levin, Axelrod, and Levin were all sent from Red Russia to stir up revolution, with Levin himself taking a part in and escaping the failed Spartacist uprising. The three decided that Bavaria was unprepared for a real revolution and that they should go down fighting. The next day, on the 13th, troops loyal to Hoffmann tried to retake Munich, but were repulsed by the Soviets' Red Army, and caused the Soviet to enforce a more Russian Soviet-style government for Bavaria, an actual dictatorship of the proletariat. Hitler indeed was in the middle of these kerfuffles in Munich. It found himself to be aiding the new Soviet government. With the advanced Soviet declared on the 13th, new elections to ensure loyalty among the army to the Soviet were set up for the 14th among the barracks Hitler resided in. Hitler would be elected deputy battalion representative for the rest of the Soviet's existence, definitely adverse to Hitler's statement of wanting to make Germany great again and go into politics in his stay in Pasewalk. Until his joining the German Workers' Party in October 1919, Hitler had no full realization of a mission or resolve to enter politics. It's during this time that Hitler is still lost from the defeat, still searching for someone to blame for his country's loss, finding himself aiding communists, under orders joining a demonstration of workers and soldiers, and the wearing of the red armband. An air of opportunism could be seen in Hitler during this time, as in later in his life, to keep his job and to not stand out among others. He showed more of an antagonism towards them and didn't share in many of their views to start with. He's just trying to keep his only means of employment. For the Bavarian Soviet, it once again had to combat Hoffmann's forces. On the 18th, they met and battled at Dachau. Yes, that one. 30,000 from the Soviet led by Ernst Toller himself, against Hoffmann's mere 8,000, with Hoffmann being repulsed for the time being. Hoffmann would regroup and ally himself with the Bavarian Freikorps under Burkhard von Oven, having 20,000 Freikorps in his command, to take back Dachau in a second battle from the Soviets and surround Munich. With Munich surrounded, the head of the Soviet Red Army, Rudolf Egelhofer, panicked and had 10 hostages executed, as revenge for atrocities by Freikorps/Hoffmann forces around Munich, on April 30th against the wishes of Toller. This killing of hostages inflamed the anti-Soviet forces and led to bloody reprisals in the same light by them as they wrestled the city from the now fledgling Soviet. In the small-scale war waged to take Munich back for the socialists of Hoffmann, artillery, armored cars, and even flamethrowers were used to bash the Soviets into oblivion, as the forces of Hoffmann and Oven pillaged the city and shot both communists and innocents alike. The battle raged from May 1st to May 3rd. After that, Hoffmann reigned victorious, and the Soviet was no more, as 606 people lay dead on both sides, including Levine and Egelhofer. From this bloodbath, Bavaria emerged, now staunchly anti-communist, more than it was before. The disorder and chaos following the communists fueled this image of them and their ousting of traditional order. Following orders from a foreign nation to oppress Germans would be a common image sown by those of the right, that these foreign powers under Jewish influence threw out the government and perpetuate violence and disorder to please the enemies of Germany. Even moderate media took a similar stance against the communists, and sometimes showed the Freikorps as disciplined liberators. With Bavaria now being anti-communist, it became a haven for a myriad of right-wingers from around Germany of various degrees to convene. Even with differing viewpoints, they all shared the hatred of Reds. Such conservative anti-communist thinking helped set the stage for the soil for the realized Hitler to germinate. Get it? With the coincidence of many Red leaders being Jewish, as we highlighted among the Red takeover, this info became tailored to aid in the stab in the back myth, which would turn Hitler into an anti-Semite from his own previous prejudices. A week after the Soviet had been destroyed, Hitler would find himself elected to a three-man committee to investigate revolutionary actions of those in his battalion, confirming an antagonism to the Reds. Hitler was now obviously working against the Reds as they had been replaced, and it kept him once again from being removed from his army job. Quoting historian Ian Kershaw, "At any rate, this new rule prevented Hitler being discharged, along with the rest of the Munich garrison, by the end of May 1919. More importantly, it brought him for the first time into the orbit of counter-revolutionary politics within the Reichswehr, that, rather than any psychological trauma in Pasewalk at the news of the defeat, any dramatic decision to rescue Germany from the November criminals was, within the following months, to open up his path into the maelstrom of extreme right-wing politics in Munich." Munich was now effectively under the control of the army until the government in Bamberg would return in August, occupied by the Bayerische Reichswehr Gruppenkommando No. 4, GRUKO in short. GRUKO would take over a department known as the Information Department that same month. The Information Department was tasked to educate army personnel in both anti-Bolshevik and nationalist thinking, along with surveillance of suspicious political groups, as well as giving speaker courses to suitable candidates with qualities of persuasion in the army to become propaganda agents to shoot down subversive ideas. Employed in the department was an army captain, Karl Meyer, as head on May 30th to organize a series of anti-Bolshevik courses for his department starting in June, and would eventually introduce Hitler into politics, become a critic against Hitler, and eventually die in one of Hitler's camps. His job in the department also included building a circuit of political spies and informants to investigate political groups mentioned before, and to finance patriotic parties, publications, and organizations. Hitler would be recruited into Meyer's department between May or June 1919 as a Verbindungsmann, translated Liaison-man, or V-man for short, and be assigned to the anti-Bolshevik courses at Munich University from June 5th to 12th, his first direct form of political education. It would be here, recognized by Hitler, that he could make an impact on people. Hitler would first meet Meyer in May 1919. Meyer had likely been brought to his attention by Hitler's work on the Investigation Committee and earlier work for the socialist government. Hitler was ideal to be in Meyer's program, and would later say of Hitler, "He was like a tired stray dog looking for a master, ready to throw in his lot with anybody who would show him kindness. He was totally unconcerned about the German people and their destinies." Among the topics discussed at the courses included German history since the Reformation, political history of the war, socialism in theory and practice, our economic situation and the peace conditions, and the connection between domestic and foreign policy. One of the speakers chosen by Meyer was Gottfried Feder, an economic expert known among Pan-Germans and to become an important member of the German Workers' Party and National Socialists. His ideas, some expressed in his manifesto, included breaking of interest slavery, which he associated with Jews, as well as being anti-capitalist, and would make an important impression on Hitler and his development of anti-Semitism by making the connection between German defeat and the stab-in-the-back myth. Another speaker, historian and professor Karl Alexander von Müller, noticed Hitler's speaking talent after a lecture he gave, as Hitler was passionately addressing a small crowd of other trainees. Müller would tell Meyer of this, and Meyer was able to recognize Hitler and be brought closer to his interests and organization. This encounter and others of Hitler's talent as a speaker would see him chosen by Meyer as part of a 26-man squad of instructors chosen from the June courses to be put into a special speaker program lasting 5 days, instructing soldiers on what they themselves had learned in the Munich program at Lechfeld near Augsburg. Hitler would arrive at Lechfeld on August 19th, and the education course would start the next day, August 20th. Part of the course included educating army men awaiting discharge in nationalist and anti-Bolshevik ideas. Hitler would be completely into his work, creating discussion on the lectures of unit leader Rudolf Beischlag, as well as giving lectures of his own. It would be here that he realized he could resonate with his audience, that his speaking could rouse people to emotions he saw fit. It was finally something he was a real success in for his life. He could speak. Fellow partners in the lecture made note of Hitler's speaking talent, and, for the first time, Hitler publicly rants against Jews. Being asked to tone down the anti-Semitism, it had finally clicked for Hitler, who had been at fault for everything from his country's defeat, revolutions, and misery it brought to his nation.
But wait, this isn't...
Jews.
I see. I understand now.
Communism. The revolutions.
Which reflects widespread sentiments of those in Munich, where such comments were frequent. The education course would wrap up on August 25th, and Hitler would soon be back in Munich, where he would lead a case against Beischlag for not paying the 26 men 500 marks, and become one of Meyer's favorite men. Hitler would be seen as an expert on the Jewish question. In his newfound hatred of Jews, which he has tied together the Jews from the revolutions listed previously to communists as a plot to destroy Germany, with help from Feder's ideas to rationalize and confirm his prejudices and put it into intellectual wording. Meyer would be asked in a letter dated September 4th by a participant in the August courses and Adolf about the Jewish question in relation to social democratic policies. Meyer would give the question to Hitler, who for the first time in written form would speak about his anti-Semitism and the Jewish question. In the Gemlich letter, dated September 16th, 1919, Hitler writes that anti-Semitism shouldn't be based on emotion but on facts. Facts being that Jews were a race and not a religion. Anti-Semitism based on emotions would produce pogroms and violence. Anti-Semitism of reason must lead to the systematic removal of Jewish rights. And its final aim must unshakably be the removal of Jews altogether. This letter shows Hitler's worldview finally begin to solidify and remain to his last days. Hatred of Jews based on race, and to create a single force to combat Jewry, seen and not seen. Hitler also cited Feder's arguments on interest slavery with Jews and anti-capitalism. With Hitler now trained in persuasion and the right politics, he was assigned with his informant post under Meyer's information department to spy on the German Workers' Party, a tiny nationalist party founded on January 5th that same year by Anton Drexler, Karl Harrer, Hermann Esser, Dietrich Eckart, and Gottfried Feder. It was one of many nationalist groups in Germany at the time, and one of 50 political groups ranging from far left to far right in Munich being spied on by the information department. Friday, September 12, 1919, would see Hitler visit a meeting of the German Workers' Party at the Stonecker Brow. Along with two other instructors from the Lechfeld course, they attended a speech by none other than Gottfried Feder on interest slavery. Dietrich Eckart was supposed to speak but was ill. Hitler claimed to have heard this speech before, and thus took to observe the party itself, finding it a boring organization, much like any other of the ones in Munich. As he was about to depart, an invited guest by the name of Baumann rose up and advocated for an independent Bavarian state. At this comment, the obviously pan-German Hitler flew into a rage and shot down Baumann's argument in front of the whole meeting. With this powerful display of rhetoric, Anton Drexler, the party chairman, was impressed by this performance and gave Hitler a copy of a pamphlet by him, My Political Awakening, and asked him to return in a few days to see if he wanted to join the party. Hitler would read the pamphlet and said that it resonated with him. A week after the meeting, he received a postcard saying that he had been accepted as a member and should attend a committee meeting of the party in a few days to discuss the matter. In his own words, Hitler had a negative reaction and supposedly wanted to found a party of his own, but his interest made him attend the meeting anyway in the Alt-Rosenbad of the Herrenstrasse district of Munich. Hitler did commiserate with the political aims of those in the committee, but would write that it was club life of the worst manner and sort at their narrow views. A few days of hesitation later, and he decided to join. His reason being it presented the individual an opportunity for real personal activity, to make his mark and dominate the party. Hitler would formally join the German Workers' Party in September of 1919 on orders from Meyer, and be given the number of member 555. 55 really, as the member count started at 500 to make it seem larger, but not 7 as Hitler claimed. Drexler wrote in an unsent letter of January 1940 to Hitler that stated he falsified his card number from 555 to 7, which goes to show that a lot of what Hitler says about himself and life anecdotes, especially in Mein Kampf, can't be taken at face value and demands further research. With Hitler now in the German Workers' Party, his entry into politics would eventually make him a local celebrity and voice for the far-right, anti-democratic, anti-capitalist, anti-Versailles, German nationalists, and anti-Semitism, and it would be due not to a vision from Pasewalk. Politics came to Hitler through circumstance, opportunism, and luck, along with nudging from the army and Meyer. And that concludes this episode. Through the struggle of war that would bleed Germany dry, cause revolution, and lead to a humiliating defeat, circumstance, not divine intervention, leads Hitler to become a politician, and prejudice fondly sprouts into pure hatred by coincidence of association through the bloody revolution. A Hitler once again lost as the war ends, and still without career prospects, now has a true purpose in life, and a stunning talent of oratory to go with it. Unrest that has subsided by the time Hitler joins the German Workers' Party will reignite once again in 1920 as Hitler forms his party and ideology to fit his own intentions and to create a better Germany in his own eyes. The next episode will deal with the party that is eventually to become the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the German Worker Party, and its founding members and principles along with the Thule Society. Thanks, and I'll be seeing you soon.